Good morning, fish keepers. Cam here from thefishroom.co.nz, and welcome to Friday. We've done it again. Let's congratulate each other with coffee. That's good coffee. I'm very happy with that one. That's very good. All right, just a bit of very quick admin before we get too deep into this. We've got a very special guest on today, so I don't want to hold that up for too much longer. Just a reminder, everybody, that we have moved our retail shop from 10 Beco to a place. We're now at 8 Beco to a place. It's literally right next door, just over the driveway. It's the big black building. We've got a fancy sign outside and stuff like that as well now. So we have moved. We are now operating from 8 Beco to a place, not 10B. That's in Stoke Nelson. So there's literally all the admin I've got. I'm now going to bring up our guest. So here we go. So thank you very much, Stan, for joining us. Really appreciate you having you. And welcome, John. Good morning, gentlemen, or evening as it were for you guys.
How you doing, Cam?
Yes. So for those of you that don't know Stan, he is a live bearer fanatic. That's what he's dedicated a majority of his fish keeping career to. So the bulk of this conversation will be regarding live bearers. So I know there's plenty of people that are keen on this topic, so it should be a really good one. So hopefully we get a decent amount of viewership and some people get some interesting information out of it from you. So first thing I'd like to bring up is that your website mentions that your parents introduced you to aquariums in 1969. So if anybody has not read your bio, can you give us some more details about how you become involved in fish keeping yourself?
Well, my parents, and they started off in the 60s, and I was the only child of our family that was interested in those fish, and I got my own first aquarium in 72. And that was just a small one, but it's like the tank that I got was given by my parents, and they told me that you have to really take care of it yourself instead of that we are taking care of it. And so I did. And the love for fish has only grown. And until this very day, I'm still keeping fish, and specifically live bearers, both fancy and wild versions. And I do a lot of things within the field. And it's basically my parents' fault that I'm very addicted to live bearers.
So what is it in particular about live bearers that's drawn you to them, that you put so much your time and effort into them?
Well, they just fascinate me. Their behavior and the way they reproduce. Most people think that when they talk about live bearers, they think of guppies, Mollies, Swordtails, and Platies, but there are so many more live bearer species that are oviviparous live bearers and viviparous live bearers, so the real live bearers. And the most real live bearers are, let's say, less known to most people. Because if we talk about real live bearers, think of goodies, half-beaks, instead of guppies.
Yeah.
And those are two disciplines that I really love.
Okay.
And it's basically a part of the fish hobby that got also very big over here in our country. And so my addiction of live bearers only got more. It just grew.
Yeah. Cool.
And I had the pleasure to visit some endemic places in Southern and Central America to watch and observe those live bearers for real. Cool. And that's really amazing if you see that.
Yeah, wow.
That's definitely something I would love to do as well. To be able to see, I would really like to be able to see some of the fish that we keep in aquariums in their natural habitat. I think it must be a dream for most fish keepers. I'm very lucky to have been able to do that.
it's a really common theme with the people that we have on that have been in the wild and in the nature with the fish that they keep, and that's kind of elevated everything to the next level, seeing them just behave naturally and what they're kind of true to form and true to color and all that type of stuff. It's definitely a really common theme with the guests that we've had on talking about that.
Because when you see them in free nature, it's different than how we keep them in fish tanks. No? Something that you just hear very often is live bearers need hard water. Well, to most of them, they do, but it's like there are also live bearers that just do very well in soft or moderate soft water. Like smaller ones like Lee's killifish, so the Hydrangea formosa. You can keep them in softer water as well without any problems. But it's also guppies. If you just keep short, thin guppies, they can also be kept in moderate soft water instead of hard water.
Really?
No, really. But it's like it's more the problem with large fin guppies that need more harder water.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know the reasoning behind the short fin to the long fin or the larger fin requiring different water requirements? Have you worked out what that is for?
Well, every live bearer needs their own specifications, like I already said, harder water, soft water, moderate water, water, soft water. It's also like the temperature rates. Not all live bearers need warm water. So, like a lot of them, like swordtails, large swordtails. A lot of those swordtails come from mountain regions, and they live in cool areas. So it's like you don't need 24 degrees in a tank specifically. They will do just fine at 20 as well, and at 18. Now, if I just look at how I just keep my live bearers outdoors, the coldest that I harvest during fall is about 5 degrees Celsius, but those were good days, so split fins. No, they just are still happy with those temperatures.
Wow. That's 5 degrees.
What?
That's at 5 degrees.
5 degrees water, but it's like they have been outside now ever since spring. They just experienced all the fluctuations of the weather conditions, and they are much stronger at the end when I harvest them. So it's with swordtails, no, they even reproduce themselves at 13 degrees water temperature. But they were outside, kept outside. So you cannot compare them with those which you just keep inside. For the margin will be too big for them to survive. You have to get they have to get used to all those fluctuations. So I basically start off with juveniles to put outside in spring. For juveniles can adapt much better than adult fish. And those will reproduce in the time period from spring till fall, somewhere in fall, depending on the weather conditions. And there will be 1 to 2 generations in the meantime that will grow up to adults. And those adults, at the end, are much stronger than their cousins that live inside.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And that's purely just because it's on, not with a climate control heater, keeping it stable, just the extra fluctuation. So it's almost a bit of the strongest will survive kind of.
It's all natural. They're just tops with gravel in it. I use palm plants. I don't use any mechanical filtration. I even don't use an aeration. Wow. So all natural. And I'm doing this already since mid-80s. Keeping out outdoors during the better months of the year.
That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I'm on.
Maybe something to do with the constant sunlight.
Yeah.
and having maybe an effect. The vitamin D that's produced through the sun, maybe having an effect on their metabolism.
Yes, it's like let's when you keep them outside. No, everything will come to the tops now that they need for feeding the cells. It's like the sun. When you look at the sun, it depends on what kind of live bearer you use. Because I have my outdoor tops located in different spots.
Mm-hmm.
So those that need much more heat will be in the sun, and most of them are kept in half shade and total shade.
Mm-hmm.
No, I live in the eastern part of Holland, and when in the southern part and the eastern part of Holland, it's much more warmer than in the west. So our summers are much hotter
Mm-hmm.
in this part of the country. So we need to take care of which fish can withstand the heat or not. Yeah. And swordtails are kept in half shade.
Okay.
Right.
And with one exception, I also have one swimming pool. I mean, it's 2 meters by 3 meters and about 80 centimeters high. I keep there also some Yucatan swordtails, so wild swordtails. They do well over there as well. But all the other swordtails need more shade to not heat up too much.
Mm-hmm.
And it works.
Wow.
And do you think when you've seen these fish in the wild, do they behave the same as they do in the ponds? Did they seek shade? Did they seek the shade like they would seek the shade in one of your ponds, or is that a behaviour that is unique to your ponds?
No, it's no. Again, it's like it depends on the live bearer you use. That in which top I will put them in. No, because if I look at guppies, they can have much more heat than platies and swordtails. Because even platies will need a bit lower temperatures to get them reproduced. And I also have to say the platies and guppies and swordtails that I use outdoors are all wild species.
Okay.
So not fancy species, because there's a difference with fancy species. They're a bit more vulnerable compared to the wild ones. So if I just put a fancy platy in water with a temperature of 15 degrees, it wouldn't feel comfortable. But like if I use a wild version, they would just feel great in there. So there's a difference. You cannot compare them, you know.
Yeah. Cool. So we've just had a question come up. With the direct sunlight heating the water and therefore reducing the oxygen content, does that have much of an impact on the swordtails?
I'm just reading it. The whole question. The direct sun heating the water and therefore reducing the oxygen content. Much of an impact on the substance. No. Okay. No, it's like because if they need more oxygen or not, you know, they will just go up to the surface or will just go lower. So they're seeking for the depth.
Cool. So they'll find where they're comfortable for what they get the requirements from, basically.
Could you just repeat that?
They'll find wherever they're comfortable enough to find the requirements that they want within their body of water, basically. Right.
Yeah. So I guess providing a pond with enough depth to offer heat and cool levels
that makes a lot of difference.
A major step towards success. Yeah.
Because I also use some tops are just a bit in the sand, so let's say about 20 centimeters is still in the sand because that's much cooler. Because I have, let's say, Sisyphorus variatus La Laguna they love this. So those are Platies. They love lower rates when it comes to temperature. No, and with the heat wave that we had this year, or you have to get them in the house, or just leave them there, but dig the top in the sand, you know. So that will give you part of the water, so the lower part, and that's how we keep them well.
Wow. Kind of relevant to what we're. Sorry, go on. I was just going to say, kind of relevant to what we're talking about here. On your website, you were talking about the importance of sunlight in guppies to bringing out like stronger colours in the males and stronger courtship behaviour and larger fish.
It's because in daylight. Yeah, in daylight, the UV light is the maximum that you can get. You cannot get that from artificial light. Not that amount of. And so if you just keep them outside, and the more daylight they catch, their colors will be more vibrant. And they grow better. So it's not only the colors, it also helps to grow them better.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you think that this can be replicated with like UV bulbs like they use for reptiles, or do you think it needs to be direct sunlight to give them all this vibrancy?
It's really the sun, because I also kept koi fish, and koi fish is the same thing. If you keep them indoors, they have less color, or let's say less vibrant. Outside, they get much more vibrant colors. I always see that if I just keep them over here, even if I keep a look at a tank that I have on the south side of the house, those are also more vibrant because the daylight comes in, and on the northern side of the house, it doesn't. And those fish are less vibrant. There's a real difference. And that's why I just love to keep it outside as well, because of the colors.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
And it's also a nice thing to see them from the top instead of as in a tank, from the side.
Yeah, it is a different view. Absolutely is. Do you find being kept outside the more fertile or more interested in spawning or reproduce bigger numbers of fish, or does that equation change at all?
There's a difference in reproduction when it comes to numbers. Outdoors, they reproduce a lot more fry than indoors. And I don't know if it has to do with the more natural environment. No?
Yeah.
Because they also get their food, by the insects. They just put their eggs there, and larvae comes out, and they eat the larvae.
Yeah. I mean, that totally makes sense. They're getting that full natural cycle of, like you said, the sunlight, picking off the algae, picking off the larvae and stuff like that. So we're getting the whole thing,
It was much more natural, and it will do just more good to the fish itself.
Right.
Because if I just harvest those fish in fall, they're much bigger than the ones indoors.
Yeah. Do you find there's ever any issues with an increased rate of parasites or anything like that from being in a natural environment?
Well, it's different culture in the water, like outside. So there could be parasites, there could be other bacteria. But when I just harvest them, they will go in separate tanks. So they will never go right away to tanks, with their relatives. Because I think it's like you have to be sure, okay, they're both healthy, but the quality is different. So one that's kept inside that has less resistance to parasites or other bacteria, you have to be careful with that. So they will stay in other tanks for the 2 first weeks.
Yeah.
And I'll treat them with salt.
Definitely. So is it a process that you've got when you bring wild wild species, do you always put them in outdoor ponds first and let them breed
No.
outside and then gradually
No.
bring them indoors? No?
No, it really depends on when I just get those new live bearers.
Right.
Because in 2 weeks we'll have more live bearers again. We've got our gathering of our own society, the National Live Bearer Society of Holland, and I'm a board member over there. And I have a list of certain live bears that I really want to purchase again. So in 2 weeks I'll have more. And then I'll see how we'll do it with all the other live bears that are outdoors, because I won't keep them all.
Yeah.
I can divide them, under all those members that we have, and I only give or donate or even sell them to people who are very serious with them, because I don't think I should just give it to someone who just likes to have a guppy or platy in their tank, because they're rare.
Exactly.
If they die, I cannot go to a store and just buy another one.
And again, you're not breeding these fish for a commercial gain. You're breeding. You don't breed these fish for commercial. You breed them for the hobby.
There is a commercial part, but that's not my main goal.
Yeah.
I participate favoristic events, so everything that has to do with ponds, fish tanks, and terrariums, so terraristics. So this starting from now, within a month, I have 2 events that I will participate in. I'll offer those fish over there. And the largest event that we have is the Vivarium. That's the largest favoristic event of Western Europe. And maybe you've heard of it. You're in Scotland.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I've got some of my friends, they actually go to it every year. Yeah. I've never been myself, but I know a few people that go regularly, and I've seen a lot of good things from it. It's a fantastic event.
Mm-hmm. It's the largest one of Western Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a chance, come and visit.
Yeah. I would definitely love to come over. I did hope to get over last year, but it just obviously with everything that was going on, it just wasn't possible.
The past 2 years was a bit different because of COVID.
Exactly.
But that's something that we had to deal with. Everybody on this globe, they had to deal with it. So events were shut down. So also our events. So we had a lot of, let's say, too much fry that we had to get rid of.
Yeah.
But it's like people also find me by my website, and like yesterday I've shipped a parcel to Germany, and there's another one planned for next week.
Cool.
So I ship as well.
Okay.
Do you want to tell us about some of the strains you're working on, or some that you're producing at the moment, and how they kind of came about within, of your interest in keeping them, or where you sort of discovered them, or something along those lines, of what you're kind of working with at the moment?
Well, basically, the most live bears that I'm keeping are wild versions. So let's say about 65% are wild, and the rest are fancy, so aquarium strains. If they go to other people, it's mostly to other serious breeders.
Yeah.
So who are distinctly looking for fish that you cannot find at a store.
Yeah. So your lines are, so the slightly more exotic, rarer ones, as opposed to the fully on mass-produced ones. And
we can conserve those fish. Like there are a lot of fish and special within this field of live bearers that are endangered, or even you can't even find them anymore. And there are some projects that we support. So we just breed also those wild breeds, and a part of them will go to the endemic areas again, and they will be released over there.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So how do you get your hands on? How do you find them? Do you have someone that's kind of combing through various available lists, or one hobbyist to another, or have someone out there looking for them in the wild? Or how do you kind of, have you got a list of target fish that you're trying to acquire to reproduce, to push back into the wild? So how do you go about that side of it?
Well, like I said, we support those projects, and so I also provide our national society offspring of those wild breeds, and once a year one of us goes to Mexico or Venezuela.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll just bring them along, and the university over there will take care of it, that they will be released into the wild again.
Neat. Cool. So just on a more sort of commercial hobbyist sort of side of things, there's the old myth that the old female swordtail turns into a male as it's grown its sword sort of after the fact, after it's been in an aquarium for a little while. Do you want to explain a little bit how the sword on swordtails work? How come a so-called female can then become a female, what it's developed for, and all of that type of thing when it comes to swordtails?
Well, if first of all, within the Cephalophorus genus, so Platies and Swordtails, there's a possibility that a female can change into a male, but it's not that all females can change into that. For Platies and Swordtails, it works differently.
Okay.
In Swordtails, you need to have we have to look to the LL combination. No, we just make it short by calling it an A, capital A, and a small a, the letter itself. So the combination of it, the combination of A and capital A, small a, those are females that can change into male.
Right. Okay.
Capital A combinations, this double capital A, will always remain a female.
Okay.
But it's a bit different with fancy swordtails, because a lot of fancy swordtails are crosses between Platies and swordtail. And with the wild Platies, it's so like that we have, besides the X and the Y sex chromosome, also a W chromosome.
Right.
And if you look at the combination, and if you just look at the combination WX or WY, those females can change into a male.
Right.
All XX females will remain a female. Yeah. So, and for X, WY and WX are born with both male and female gonads, but they always start off as being female, with just like other life forms. We start off as being female. That's the difference. But if you look at the fancy swordtails, the aquarium strains, no, because they are mostly crosses. The way it just how they change from female to male can be a bit different. For it depends. Will they just change by the principle of swordtails or by the principle of Platies? That's a bit hard to determine. But what I just said goes for wild versions, so the pure ones that you and not the aquarium seeds. So the aquarium seeds can be different. So a swordtail can change to male, with a principle of Platies,
Right.
if that's more dominant. No. So that's a bit hard to give a proper answer.
Yeah, so I'm following that enough because I've spent a bit of time on your website over the last couple of days reading all this information. So as you're talking, I'm like, okay, yeah, I've read that. I know where you're kind of going with that. So we might get John to possibly throw a link to the website, or there's a particular tab on your website that talks about the genetics. Maybe if you can find that into the comments, so people can have a bit of a read of that, so they can kind of get a bit more of the head around that. Yeah. So it all basically comes down to basic genetics of the fish and what one's carrying, what one's not carrying, to whether they can or not, essentially. Yeah.
Well, genetics is quite an intriguing story. It's like it's also a hard story.
Yeah.
Because you cannot compare livebearer 1 to livebearer 2. So how it works. But I do love genetics, you know. For currently, I also leading the National Guppy Working Group, and I do that together with Fred Pousser. I don't know if you know him, but he's the biologist who named the Endler guppy, the Cecilia Wingay.
Yep.
So I'm leading the whole group with him, and he's doing the genetic part, and I'll do all the other things. And I learn a lot from him. And it's because I really think it's interesting to create a certain line or a certain trait that you want to pass on to the other generations. But you really have to know which is dominant, which is recessive. Is it double recessive, triple recessive? Yep. And get them breeding true.
Yes. Yeah.
Otherwise, you cannot speak about a strain.
Okay.
A fancy strain should be breeding true for at least 98%.
Right. So when you're looking at breeding particular strains or lines of fish, what is it that you're looking for or trying to do with them? Like,
first of all, if I would like to, I just make a certain plan that I want to see in a certain breed.
Yeah.
Or it can also be a trait that is a wild trait that you just want to focus on, you know. I'll take my time for it, because you have to line breed and cull in every generation. And culling does not mean kill those fish, because a lot of people think, oh, you're going to kill them. No, I'm just going to separate them from the other group. And they go in a mixed tank or whatever, and go along with all the ones that have the trait that you want, to just get it more stronger into the breed itself. Because I'm setting up also own created guppy lines. And then you really need to know something about the genetics. And it's because it's the male, it can also be the female that carries the dominant traits. Because a lot of people think that with guppies, it's just the male. And so he will be responsible for all the colors and the shapes of the fins and the body shape. And that's not true.
Right, okay.
But you need to consider that it separate, very individual per breed. So you cannot compare them as being similar.
I'm just going to use color as the example in this. But sort of how far through have you gone in like a breeding project, and all of a sudden a fish is throwing something a completely different color that you didn't even know was in that gene, and it's just sort of blowing your mind, like it should never have lasted that long, or do you know where I'm kind of going with that?
Yeah, that can happen. Especially if you just use fish that you don't know the genetic history of. No. But also every fancy strain can develop a phenotype that's from one of those ancestors. As long as it's a breed that has been developed by crosses, you can always expect that. But it's like you can put it to a minimum to select the right fish and to call the bad ones, or at least the ones that don't meet up the traits sufficiently.
You can almost bring it back around to a purer form by
to a pure form
through the lines, just removing the ones you don't like to narrow it down.
Because you want them to breed true.
Yeah, I guess that's why wild caught fish is that, it's got its advantages.
It's a time investment.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a time investment, because a lot of people think, we just crossed 2 species and that's a new strain or a new breed. It's that's not how it works.
No.
So, with it being a time investment, what's the longest period of time you've put into a project that you're wanting to achieve this from
3
this?
years.
And how long? 3 years?
3 years.
3 years.
Wow.
At what point did you decide?
But it's like you're just going for a certain trade.
Yeah.
Traits.
Yep.
And
when you've been line breeding for 2 years or 3 years, at what point can you say, okay, I've locked that in, I've got that species now, I can give somebody a male and a female, and I know they'll produce a certain type of offspring? At what point do you know that that's the case? Do you just continue breeding and you maybe get 3 or 4 generations and then that's considered locked in? Or
no, it's not that it's like a steady rule, like as a 14th generation. No, they breed true. It really depends on the whole genetic package of both breeding fish, so the male and the female. It's just like something like, I've got a cross between 2 breeds, and I'll cross brother and sister. Our brother and sister have genetics from both parents, so that will take much longer to get a certain trait steady than crossing a daughter back to the father.
Right. Okay.
If you know what I mean. And I split them. I split the groups, like let's say one batch. There are 30 fry. I'll make 3 batches out of it, so that they just grow up separately. That generation will be crossed back to a generation that goes from the other line, from the existing parents, so that we just have uncle and niece. So then it's a bit less close related. So that's how I work, because you need to crossbreed and inbreed the first generations, and later on you can just add new blood to it, because you know what happens if you just breed too long within the same line. You get deformities.
It's a similar process when you're breeding shrimps. I know the genetics are different, but the process is quite similar, where the first and the second generation have to breed in order to get the third generation. And then you start to notice that the colours fade slightly, and you just need to inject that new genetics in order to strengthen it and maintain the strong features. I suppose, don't you?
Well, it really depends on which kind of guppies or sorts, whatever. Mostly guppies. I'll use, because it's like the name genetics. It contains all genes from every single ancestor. And you have to just go back to a couple of traits, or just one trait that you just love and want to pass on the whole time. It's like I take care of it that I have a couple of generations of the same line that I will just divide in groups again, and this will cross even cousins. Because if you just keep one line and do mass reproduction, what a lot of people do, you don't breed on traits anymore. Traits can be lost, can get lost because of that. Because you get so much inbreeding that mutations are at hand at a certain point. And you don't want that unless it's a good mutation, of course. But it's like I focus on a certain trait, and as long as I can do that, no, I'll take care of it. I'll be sure of it. That I have more. There's multiple generations, which I can justify in groups. So fish that are related can crossbreed, but not too close related anymore. And that's why I just keep the group healthy and well, and all the traits you wanted will be in there again. So it's the first generations. It comes down to selecting, and culling.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So there is a percentage that you cannot use.
I just want to quickly go back a little bit. You said like you'll get a group of 30 fry and you'll separate them out into three groups. Yep. Do you separate them out to gender, or does that not matter to you? Just three tanks in, or you rip them all apart?
No, it's also I divide them also. I separate also from gender. No.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So because it's like males can get sexual active at a very young age.
Yeah.
But the females and the males have the same growth rate, the same pace that they grew up. It means that a younger male can already impregnate a female while the female is still small.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. So I always use virgin females, but I let them grow up first, so that they got enough body and that they have enough, let's say, they have more potential to have better batches when it comes to numbers.
Yeah. How early can you tell the difference?
Huh?
How early can you tell the difference in the male and the female when you're sort of separating out?
First of all, I separate the females from the males at a young age, because the so-called gravid spot,
Yeah, I see that. And you can see that female, from as small as that. Yeah, I've noticed that. And
already present.
The fish tank I showed you earlier on.
Yeah, well, let's say after a couple of days or after a couple of 2 weeks, within that period of time, you see the gravid spot developing. Because the gravid spot itself does not mean that a female is pregnant. It's just a translucent part of the skin. And because when it stretches, when she gets pregnant, it gets thinner. And that's why you can't see what's going on inside.
Yeah.
Like the eyes of the fry, whatever. Because a lot of people think, oh, no, she's got a gravid spot, so she must be pregnant. No, that's not the case.
No. But I've got a small fish tank. It's a 60-litre one. And I put 3 endlers in it, a male and 2 females. And obviously, they're breeding like crazy. But the first batch, I was really surprised at how early you could see the gravid spot on the females. And, Cam, you're talking maybe about 5 mil in length before it started to develop. And I was like,
not always even like that. Even smaller.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe a couple of months or something, but you're talking about a couple of days old by the sound of it. Wow, that's mind-blowing.
A lot of seasoned breeders, at least guppy breeders or whatever breeder, they see it quite fast. It's like what I already said. If you just take a good look at it, you can see the gravid spot after a couple of days or maybe within 2 weeks. It depends on the breed itself.
Wow. Yeah. We just had a question from Jens in the chat. I'm not aware of that particular species being here. I haven't seen it in New Zealand. I will double check with one of the importers that I speak to whether or not it is, but I suspect that is not on our available import list from off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
I couldn't get the last part you said.
I was just replying to Jens. I don't actually think that is available in New Zealand.
Oh,
We've got a very strict list of what we can import and what we can't. And if it's not on our available list, then we can't bring it in. And I suspect that particular variety or species isn't on our list.
yeah, well, for not all countries allow certain breeds to be imported.
Yeah.
Because the one what Jens was asking for is like that breed can be found over here in Western Europe.
Right. Yeah.
Because I know a lot of breeds who have them.
Do you have many issues with sterile fish when you're breeding them, or is that not a common problem?
What kind of fish?
With sterile ones that can't produce.
Yeah.
Well, I think Cam is meaning when you hybridize species, is it common? I know you mentioned this on your website. It's a common topic or myth that, or counter argument when people discuss hybrid fish breeding, that the offspring is sterile or
sterile.
Yeah.
If you get a crossbreed between two different breeds, it doesn't mean right away that they're sterile. It depends more like how close are they related. What's going on quite often now is crossing Mollies and Guppies. Are they sterile? They can be sterile, but they can also be fertile. This depends on each individual specimen, what we've noticed. Right now, I'm having a project again, also between Guppy and Molly, and she's almost done. And I will have to wait if they're sterile or not. It really depends, because I had also other hybrids that were just sterile. Then that's fertile. I mean, fertile, because they had offspring.
Right.
So I would say crossing live bearers can only happen, first of all, not by genus, that they have to be within the same genus, but the sexual organs have to be compatible, because there's a difference in shape of them. And that's point one. And the second point is, will they be fertile or not? Can I make a breed out of it? Most of the time, not. But there are certain crossbreeds that are just fertile. Again, even with crossing Molly and Guppy, they can be fertile, but let's say that about 10-50% that can be fertile, and the rest is all sterile.
Wow.
So that differs.
That's interesting.
Because a lot of people think that it's always infertile.
Yeah. Do you have some sort of a base of ethics or something that you follow to make sure you don't prevent or provide or produce unwanted sort of varieties or traits that aren't required or wanted? Do you know what I kind of mean with that?
Let's say if it goes for every kind of breed that I have over here. I'm looking for certain traits that I like, and every single specimen that does not meet up with the traits sufficiently will be called from the group.
Yeah, okay.
Unless it's that interesting to make a breed out of something that I wasn't aware of that it could happen, but my place is not growing.
So it's not so much sort of frowned upon, but this is what I'm trying to achieve, and I'm going to produce what it is that I'm trying to do. And if I don't sort of hit that, then that's kind of okay. Is that more to the point? It's not, you've just made a monster for the sake of making a monster. This is what I'm trying to achieve. We'll just go back to colours. I want to make a full red fish, for example. That's what I'm going for, and that's what I'm going to do.
With every breed that I have is that I just go for a certain trait, and yes, that's what I want to achieve. Let's say I'm right now busy with a calico guppy.
Wow, cool.
Calico, you won't find a calico guppy. A calico parent is something that you see in platies nowadays, but you'll see those in goldfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Shubinkins.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
both the calico, and now I'm going for the calico. I've got my first steps already in there.
Cool.
And right now I have them outdoors to give them as much sunlight as possible. And when I just harvest them, I'll just go on and line breed them more. And so I have to do a lot of selection
Yeah.
in there. But it's the start is already
Cool.
present.
With the fish that you don't have the traits on that you're looking for, what do you do with them? Because I'm assuming that you'll have a significantly large quantity.
First of all, those fish that are unwanted will go to a mixed tank.
Yeah.
Part of them will go to stores.
Yeah.
But there are also people who wants to have them. They can just scoop them out, you know. And when I'm at an event, I'll just can sell them as being mixed.
Yeah.
Of course, I won't kill them. Each individual specimen that is not close enough to the traits that I want will go to a mixed tank first. And again, it's like I get rid of it very fast, because a lot of people and a lot of stores over here in this region knows me, and they do know that I do get good quality of fish, even though they're a mix.
Yeah. Still a nice fish, but just not what you're wanting to achieve from them.
It can be a very beautiful one.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't meet up with the traits I want, then they have to.
When you're going for a specific, trait, you can't make any. When you've got something in your mind that you're focused on, and something doesn't cut it, then it has to go. Otherwise, what you're doing is pointless.
Yeah.
I couldn't really hear the last part.
What I'm saying is, when you like Stan, when you've got an end product in mind, a particular strain, and if there's anything that just is slightly off from what you're aiming for, it has to go, because that could jeopardize the entire strain.
Has to go. Has to go. Yeah, you have to really be make a hard decision. Like, is it okay or not okay? Nothing in between. Because if you do that, it's like, because you don't know if let's say if there's a specimen that has a mutation, and you don't know if that's dominant or not in passing on. And if you want to keep it clean, as we call it, you really need to have to cull him from the group. There's no other way.
Deformities and like odd mutations, are they a common thing that you see, or is that not as common as what?
I hardly see deformities. I hardly see, and that's more because what I told you before. I divide the batches so that they're not really that close related. If we would just do mass production, then no culling takes place. No, it is so close related that within a couple of generations, deformities will show. And that would be a pity, you know. There's a lot of, at least here in New Zealand, there's a lot of deformed guppies that particularly float around, and potentially not having new bloodlines or not being treated correctly, or just mass production, I think, is a main contributor to it. But there is equally some people that are playing with live bearers and guppies and are doing really good jobs and producing some really lovely fish. So it's, I'm sure it's the same in many places in the world. There's some people doing amazing stuff, and there's some other stuff going around that shouldn't be going around. So okay, so that's pretty much brought us to the end of. It's like. Well, you have to be very
pretty much
principle. Like, what?
I think there's a slight delay from what I'm saying to you picking it up. I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
That's, you probably have seen me move forward. No, it's
that's pretty much
but
brought us to the end of our sort of structured questions that we've had. Is there anything that's come up that you want to ask, John, or you kind of good where you're sitting now, or do you want to know some more?
Well, there's something that's probably not really connected, and I'll probably making a fool of myself by asking this, but it's something that I've always wondered, and you know, you're probably the best poised person to answer the question. You have your guppies, and then you've got angler guppies. Is angler guppy a different species, or is that a strain of guppy that's been developed?
That's a bit hard to answer, because it's like they're related. You know?
Right.
Let's be clear about that. That's like their DNA differ from guppy. That's the only main difference between guppies and antler guppies. The name already says it. We call it antler guppies. They're guppies, but it's like they're not reticulata. So you've got when it comes to guppies, wild guppies, you've got Pusilla reticulata, the most widespread guppy breed. Yeah. Then you have the Pusilla obscura from Trinidad and Tobago. Then you have the Pusilla kemkesi that occurs in Suriname. And the fourth group are the Pusilla wingei, so the antler guppies. They all differ in DNA, but they are very close related, and their sexual organs are compatible, so you can cross them.
Yes, I know. I've accidentally bred swordtail anglers with fantail guppies a while back.
Yeah, well, fantail guppies are the result of selecting, of course.
Yeah.
After certain mutations. Because like I have this discussion quite often with Fred Pousser, so the one who's responsible with Michael Kepkes to rename the antler guppy into Pusilla wingei after the Danish biologist. And but they claim that it's a kind of guppy. Just like Micropusilla breeds, like the Picta of the Parade or the Minima, and they're guppy-like species, as he calls them. I've even asked Dr. Wolfgang Steek from the Steak Antler. We worked together in 2013 in Berlin, and he still claims that that's an genuine antler, while a lot of people think it's a natural hybrid, because it does have
that was the next question,
guppy traits.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's still an undefined matter whether an antler is a guppy or not.
It's not a silly question. It turns out it's quite a deep question, not a silly question at all.
Something that's come up for me in that little part then is what sort of temperature range can endlers handle, as well as guppies, sort of ups and downs? Because over here there's considered a temperate guppy, which is considered to be a cold water guppy.
Well, fancy guppies are more vulnerable, so they have a smaller margin in tolerance of the water temperature. If you look at short fin guppies, that could be fancy guppies, but short fin or wild type guppies and antlers can be kept without any problems between 17 and 30 degrees Celsius. So that's a wide range.
Yeah, very.
That's a wide range, but the difference is in the fin shape. So is it large fin or short fin? Short fin guppies are much stronger.
Okay.
So that takes you back to what you mentioned earlier on, where the large fin can handle the harder water.
They need harder water.
Softer water, yeah.
Because if you just keep large fin guppies in soft water, what happens is that the fins will tear.
Right.
So they get torn fins, what you see happening. And with short fin guppies, there's no problem with damage on the fins. Okay. So that's the main reason that large fin guppies need harder water.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Cool. So that's all that I have for you today. I'm sure that if we'd scheduled an extra hour's worth of conversation time, we could have had another hour. And if we'd scheduled one, we probably could have had another 3 hours quite easily. So I like to end all of our. Oh, we've got a quick question.
One more question just from somebody that just recently joined us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Guppies not do so well in tannin-filled water. Most of my female guppies died after 9 months with the nitrates between 20 and 30 ppm.
Well, what I already said is like tannin water is soft water. There you go. Now, then it won't do that well unless you have short fin guppies. What I was already mentioning is so large fin guppies could also be lyre tails. They need harder water, and tannin water is soft water.
The anglers I was talking about, I've got them in soft acidic water. There's a lot of wood, and it's quite brown tannin water, and they're doing okay. I mean, I wouldn't say they're breeding, but and that doesn't really indicate much. But they're very small and they're short fins, so that goes with exactly what you're saying.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Cool. Between those two, because a lot of people think guppies are all the same. So it's like,
that's great information to know.
It's also like the commercial known guppies, the fancy guppies and the commercial ones. Now there's a lot of inbreeding there over there, and they are weaker in general. So keep them in hot water at all times when they're commercially purchased.
Yep.
So it's like guppies itself, if you just go take a look in the wild, they occur mostly in fresh water, but there's also a lot of wild breeds that live in brackish water. And a lot of people just don't know that. And so they just put them in fresh water and they have them just for a week or 2 weeks and it's dead, And you really have to be careful with that.
We have a similar issue with mollies over here.
Huh?
I think we've got a similar issue here with mollies over here being produced in brackish water and then coming to fresh water and they don't last very long. I think it's quite a common thing over here from what we get.
Same thing. It's also with, let's say, swamp guppies. They occur fresh and in brackish water, but it's like they do better in brackish water in general. Unless they come from Thailand, and those the ones from Thailand are completely freshwater fish.
Or you've got the guppies that Ivan, when we had Ivan on cam, he was telling us that he used to go observe guppies in the sewers in Venezuela.
Well, it's like I've got also wild guys from Venezuela, Mexico, and whatever, but they all have their own needs.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, if you want to have them that they would die, you have to just put them together. But I'll just keep them all separate, so everybody will know that there are pure strains. And I'm also glad that a lot of people now seem to have met up with wild guppies more. Because a lot of wild guppies are more becoming more a trend right now over here in our country here instead of the fancy guppies.
Feel free to send some over to me, Stan. Feel free to send some to my way. feel free next time you're packing some up to send them over this way.
Yeah, you give me your address.
Yeah, happily.
I'll send them over.
Absolutely. I've got a fish tank right there that could just have a nice group right there.
So I like to try and close off our interviews or our conversations with people with just a quick set of 6 questions. These are really simple questions. They're short and sweet, so we'll fire that off and then we'll close it off purely because I've got to open my shop about 5 minutes ago, so I'm just a little bit now. I'm a little bit more time. Sorry. So if you could be any animal in the world, what would you be?
If I would be an animal?
Yeah,
if
any animal.
Any
A
animal.
lion.
A lion? Yeah, fair.
Because I'm a Leo. My sign is Leo. So I need to be a lion, huh?
Yeah, yep. Do you prefer tea or coffee?
Tea.
Tea. If you're tossing a coin, do you call heads or tails?
Tails.
Tails never fails, my friend. Are we alone in the universe?
I don't think we're alone.
Okay.
I think there's more out there.
What's your ultimate holiday destination?
Hawaii.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep. And what is your ultimate unicorn fish? What's one you've always wanted to keep or observe in the wild?
What my favorite fish is about?
A unicorn, the one that you've never kept or one that you have never seen in the wild. What's one fish for you that you really want to see or keep?
Actually, I haven't thought about that. Well, a real it's not really a fish, is it? An octopus.
That can work. Yep.
But I would like to see one for real.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our time. So thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I know it's after
Thank you for
midnight now
having me.
I really like it. So
No, you're very
thank you,
welcome.
everybody. Yeah.
All right. I'll be in touch for those fish.
Yeah, contact me. You
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Bye, Cam.
Okay, thanks.
Have a good one, guys.
Thanks for
Happy
having
fish
us.
keeping. No
Have a
worries.
good
Catch you
weekend,
later.
everybody. Take care. All right.
See ya.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.